Good morning, everyone. I'm Marianne Riley. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and I am joined by Dr. Tiffany Wicks, and I've emphasized the doctor because 15 days ago, Tiffany went from Miss Wicks to Dr. Wicks.
Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Tiffany Wicks. I have been part of Newark Board of Education for 11 years. I went from a substitute and now to a teacher, then a supervisor of ELA, then a vice principal, and now a principal at Sir Isaac Newton Elementary School. I'm also one of the writers, co-writers, reviewers of the units K-5 that we're going to discuss, the Amistad units that we're going to discuss today.
Thank you, Tiffany. So we are going to take, hi, welcome. You're at perfect time. Come on in. And you can sit where there's a book. When do we go? Thanks. So we wanted to provide some background with regard to why the Amistad units, how they came about, and we wanted to start with, what was the reason for this? Why were we even thinking about really revising a curriculum? The district, had just purchased a Basel series, and when we reviewed it, we realized it would not get us where we needed to be. And so these were some of the factors that really helped us to understand that a call for action was necessary. The first is that there had been scripted instructional programs in the district. They did not return the kind of results that our children deserved. The second is that the classroom observations revealed that a lot of the time was spent teaching skills-based, and it was disconnected from knowledge building. The third was that the curriculum was largely, there wasn't a physical curriculum, it was largely textbooks. And there's a distinct difference between a curriculum and a textbook. And then last, the Amistad legislation, which is 20 years old, had not been realized. It had been promised, but it had not been realized. And so those pieces combined to really help us rethink what we mean when we think about K-5 literacy education. Yeah, I think it's right. So we knew that we wanted to affect something called the instructional core, and the instructional core is nothing more than the teacher and the student in the presence of content. And we understood that what happened in terms of what students were actually doing is what mattered most. I'm thinking about what we heard earlier this morning in terms of the conversation downstairs about how do we move academics. I want you to know that by the time we leave this session, we will not have just sort of skirted about that. We will have looked at that very deeply. We'll also, for the first time, be sharing some data from Tiffany's school that we looked at yesterday. This is data from October 2022, and it is informed by 2 years of Amistad curriculum. So this was the shift. We wanted to develop high quality curriculum that absolutely enhanced that instructional core. Let me just say, the instructional core is so important because what Dick Elmore's research from Harvard said was this: you cannot improve outcomes for students without affecting all three parts of that core. You have to be thinking about the content, you have to be thinking about the teacher's capacity, and you have to be thinking about the students' relationships with one another as well as with the teacher. And the Amistad work addresses all of those pieces. We absolutely, and this is, I'd love to think this is done. This is so not done. We are still investing in the development of teachers' content, pedagogy, social emotional learning, and also we have added, we're not going to be speaking about that today, but we've added a very systematic approach to phonics. In order to prevent reading difficulties, both knowledge building, which is what we are focusing on today, has to occur, as well as a systematic approach to phonics and also writing. All three of those pieces are in play right now in Newark Public Schools. The Amistad Commission. So the Amistad Commission is based on the law that was passed in the early 2000s, and it indicated that, and this is not, by the way, particular to just Newark Public Schools, but all schools, public schools in New Jersey, needed to include, in some fashion, texts, information, opportunity for students to study African American, African, and also Indigenous people. And that call, I guess, has been met in different ways in the past in Newark, but not in a systematic way. So we've created integrated ELA units in grades K through 5. You can, I'm not going to read the screens to you, but you can see that these units are, they're built, that the ideas are built across the units. The integration is both social studies, so it's civics, geography, history, as well as science units as well. And they're all built inside of ELA. This was how we began the work. We developed some units. We then had those units vetted by NBOE teachers as well as board members. We had the units in front of community members. This is probably one of the more significant aspects of the work, is that we brought the units, they were not completed at that time, but they were well underway. And community members also took a look at them. They recommended that we have a historian look at them, and so we did. We had Junius Williams and some colleagues of his, and they have pored over every single unit and made recommendations for revisions, which we did. And then they went to the board for approval, and they're in play. Junius Williams gave, and his team gave incredible feedback to us. They let us know where we were historically inaccurate. They let us know where we were missing culturally important information. They made recommendations at times for, hey, you're using this book, we want to recommend this book. The amount of those recommendations were pretty minor compared to the whole unit, but they were important differences, ones we probably would have missed. And Tiffany, do you want to start with this part? Yeah. And
So our process started in 2020. When we came together as a group, we got some teachers from the schools, and we co-led just kind of a think tank of how we were going to build out these units. And so then in 2020, they were written. In 2020 school year, September, after we went for COVID, we started them virtually. 2021, we came back, and we started implementing them in person. Community reviewed again the 2021, because every year we were writing, and so they continue to review them. Anytime a curriculum or a new unit is written, the board members, teachers, community members review them. Local historian, we talked about Junius Williams. We also had, I forget his name, in Florida, Frere. Okay. Someone else, right, looking over the work. And then they always gave us recommendations on, you know, the historical inaccuracy that we may have had. Like, we have an example where there was a picture that we have of where the enslaved people were living, and it was inaccurate because it looked too pretty. And Mr. Williams, or Dr. Williams, said, no, you have to show what it really looked like. Yes, Dr. Payne. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I guess we should both stand here. That was Dr. Williams and Dr. Payne. We were blessed by having amazing groups of people who helped us. So we feel really strongly that the work in this iteration is both historically accurate, culturally sensitive, and we'll be able to tell you in a little bit also academically successful.
And lastly, each summer when we have our summer reading, we have our students also read our culturally relevant texts, and they have to write about each of those texts. And then at the end in our units, we also have like these daily instructional tasks that build on their writing skills as well. So these are some of our units. You can see how they're culturally relevant. Going back to embedding and on the recommendations of the Amistad Bill, going into third grade with the Civil Rights Goes to School. They learn about Sylvia Mendez, Ruby Bridges, and Thurgood Marshall. And then we have another unit here, Gracias Thanks. It's a dual language unit. So the books are not only in English, but they're in Spanish as well. And so we hit our African American students and our Latinx students, and it goes back some of our units into the indigenous cultures to see where the cultures actually resided. Here's just like a pacing chart of our third grade units. So you'll see how they are learning the different facets of social studies and the culturally relevant recommended on the Amistad Commission. So all of our units are knowledge building. So we build capacity, a conceptual knowledge in all of our units. All of our units have learning intentions. Those are what are our students learning, and our students can tell you. They start with, I am learning. We also have success criteria. That's where the students can tell you, I can do this by the end of this lesson. Also, we have our quality interaction. So we have embedded research-based strategies for teachers to use so that students can interact. They can turn and talk. They can do vocabulary using the Freyer-Marzano models. So we have a lot of different strategies that teachers can use to build that quality interaction. And then lastly, they show their independent thinking doing their daily instructional task. The daily instructional task takes all of what they learned for that day, and they start to base their own opinions based on evidence to answer the question. And so here we have a quote from Vygotsky. Vygotsky talks about two ways that children build their cultural development. The first way is with people, and the second way is within themselves. And that builds their formation of concepts, their memory, their attention, their human interaction. That's how it's built. Also, it relates to James Britton. And he says, all learning floats on a sea of talk. And that's where all of this curriculum hits, is that discussion. Finding their voice. That's what we kept talking about this morning, where students start to find their voice. And even though the teacher is teaching them about different concepts and contexts, students are finding their voice relating to the characters that they're learning about. And so we wanted to share that with you. So here's an example of the daily instructional task. So in this unit, they read All the Colors We Are. So here's the book that they're reading. Sorry, microphone. So, yeah. So this is a daily instructional task from that book, and the daily instructional task says, explain what All the Colors We Are is mostly about, use evidence from the text to support your response, include vocabulary learned from the text in your response, begin with a topic sentence and with a conclusion, vary your sentences, and spell words correctly. Each daily instructional task, each lesson is connected to a rubric so that the students are accountable for their learning. They know what a 4 looks like, a 3, a 2, a 1 looks like, and the teacher reviews that with them. So here's an example of what students wrote. All the Colors We Are is mostly about skin color. We get our skin color 3 different ways. The first way is from the sun. The second way is from the melanin, which is the skin color of our skin. I'm sorry. The third way is from our parents and from our ancestors who have different skin. And so they start to learn this information and kind of negating the narrative that they've been taught previously of how skin color or race has come about.
This is a second grade unit, and it's a second grade unit that Dr. Wicks really led the development in as well. I'm running quick.
Okay.
No, let me just add one last. I think I want to just pause here just for a second. I think what I want to emphasize is a lot of times when we talk about academic growth, we don't talk particularly about what really is going to help to do that. What are the components? And we heard, a lot of those components this morning. But I also want to just say that the structure of the closing kind of task of a daily instructional task matters greatly. The finishing work that students do without their teacher is really important because they need to be able to do those things. They can get support along the way. They have relevant texts. They have rigorous text. They have lots of conversation. All of those pieces matter so that as students are working, this is not the only kind of daily instructional task, but this is just one example, that they can then bring closure to actually doing the work themselves. I see a lot of times in classrooms where that finishing work is not done. The curriculum is designed so that the finishing work is not maybe on a Friday we'll do this, but it's every single day. Or every single lesson. Sometimes a lesson is longer than a single day. But that students then have the opportunity to actually demonstrate and get practice at answering rigorous questions, and so on.
Thank you. Okay, so the impact of the Amistad units. So this month, Newark Public Schools, we all took our NWA district-wide assessment, math growth assessment. As the principal, Sir Isaac Newton, we are a new school, so we're only 3 years or 2 years and a few months open. And so our third grade is small. We have 13 students. Out of the 13 students, 9 of them, 69%, were at or above grade level. This was really meaningful because, remember, we just came out of a pandemic, even though it's still happening. But this told us that the first year that they actually did the units, they were virtual. That was first grade. In second grade, that was the first time they did it in person. And now in third grade, this is now going to be their third year doing our units. And so 69% of them are passing. The four, so there are 4 who were not at grade level, but the 2 that were approaching just need strategic, specific support. The other 2, one of them was homeschooled. So once we left March 13th, 2020, that student didn't come back until this year. And so those 2 students will need intensive support. But it was really great to see the impact of the units and how much content and concepts they actually learned by learning things that were relevant to them.
And I think we wanted to pause here because so often, like our performance in Newark Public Schools is not high at all. And it is the intention of having curricula like the one you're seeing today. I have absolutely no doubt it can impact really positively and frankly, in the scheme of things, fairly quickly. Outcomes for students. It's the systematic nature of the curriculum along with a phonics curriculum, along with a writing curriculum, working together, unbelievable leaders, leading that effort that makes the difference so that the narrative in Newark of students underperforming doesn't need to continue. That narrative, when we looked at the Amistad, the interest in Amistad in the community and the need to absolutely raise achievement by providing students with better curriculum, it was an absolute easy match to do both of those. And what's so exciting is Tiffany and I looked at these results. I mean, when we say this is new data, this was yesterday. I was trying to get to a dry cleaner. I think I left about like 4 something just so that I could zoom up there. But we had looked at her data at that point. Beginning the year with 70% of the students at and above grade level raises the achievement of everybody, because now the area of focus for the 2 students who are struggling can easily be met in ways that when it's the opposite of that, the entire discourse in the classroom changes. So what Tiffany is doing at her school is raising at every single grade level that potential. So I want to just sort of pause and say that, because so often we're not talking about, really important successes, and especially when they're nascent, when they're just beginning, as this one is. We're going to shift. When Tiffany became Dr. Wicks, her study was on our implementation of Amistad.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the title of my research was called Understanding Teacher Perceptions of the Amistad Units on Their Instructional Practices and the Academic Experiences of Black Female Students. So as you see this morning, we kept talking about our Black male voices, and I knew that in my research, Black female voices were important as well. We won't go too much into the Black female voices, we'll really stick to the units, but I wanted to share the title. So I really wanted to understand, what did the teachers think about the units? Did it change their instructional practices? And did they see a difference in their students' academic achievement and like their academic experiences? Were they talking more? Were they raising their hand, participating? Did they initiate conversations? So that's what I was looking for. So here are the 3 research questions. What are teachers' perceptions of how the Amistad integrated units influence their pedagogy? How, if at all, have teachers' instructional practices changed since they adopted the Amistad integrated units curriculum? And what are teachers' perceptions of how, if at all, Amistad integrated units influence Black female students' learning experiences? And so as I was going through the interviews, the first theme that popped up was cultural relevance. All of the teachers talked about how empowered they felt teaching the units. They talked about how empowered their students felt learning about their own cultures and then learning about the cultures of others. So there were a lot of stories that our Latinx students didn't know about our African American students and vice versa. And so they did even show empathy for each other as well. So it really informed them about each other's cultures. The second thing that they talked about was objectivity. A lot of them were afraid to give too much information. They wanted students, they didn't want to offend families. They wanted students to come up with their own opinions about the different things that they were learning and remove their own biases when they were teaching. So here are some of the things teachers said. I think the Amistad units are definitely a great thing that was integrated into the curriculum because it incorporates cultures, and the kids are able to see themselves in the books that they read. They get excited when they hear a read aloud about young kids that talk about experiences like making friends and how we shouldn't judge people by how they look. And I just think that the Amistad units are definitely a good thing that was integrated into the MPS curriculum. Another teacher says, I have to think of the student as a whole. Am I offending a student? Am I presenting it too much? Am I bringing knowledge and awareness to our kids rather than what I think? I think of how the units are able to grasp and relate to real life. That's my biggest practice as a teacher, allowing students to relate to the text and see the real world connection. And so you see how cultural relevance was really important to everyone that was part of the process. The students, which they probably didn't even know was being culturally relevant, but the teachers understood what it meant by teaching the curriculum. The second theme was pedagogy. So the question was, did it change your instructional practices? They talked about how it immensely changed their practices. They had to research even more about things that, yeah, they might have known about different events and concepts, but they didn't understand how to teach it. So they had to plan, they had to research, they had to add additional resources so that the students can understand and they themselves can understand. Because they actually said, like, I can't teach this, like I can't go to work and just open the book. I have to like understand what I'm saying, because again, going back to offending someone or not understanding the concept. And so they said, I will look at a lesson a couple days maybe, and it was a little heavy. I think it was a little bit like the students aren't grasping some of the questions or the amount of work that they were expected to do in one day. I would have to like modify some of the lessons. A lesson that should take one day most of the time, it took like 2 because I have to chunk the text. Checking for comprehension, turn and talks take me a little bit longer. The Amistad units needed to be modified to fit our students. My instructional practices changed like 100%. Because I'm modifying most of the month. I had to look at the questions from the district and then I had to modify them. The text was a little bit more comprehensible for them. I am also just learning to integrate different techniques like recording the text, finding outside videos, and a lot more multiple responses throughout the unit using things like call reading. I'm having to use a lot of writing strategies with it. One thing that was extremely successful for me was peer reviewing and just showing them how I look at the text as they write. Just what I go through, like my process of just using the rubric and looking for certain key elements in the writing. That really was a big turn in the writing for them. I felt like they were so proud of themselves. They took more pride in what they were writing and thought about what they wanted to write a lot more. So the teachers talked about all of the embedded strategies. One teacher talked about how her toolbox built. She didn't know that there were so many strategies to use to teach students and how the curriculum allowed her to see different ways to use them. And the last theme that came up after looking at the interviews was cultural competence, like understanding who you are. The teachers talked about the sense of self. They were talking about the Black female students because that's where my questions were, but they said everyone in the class found themselves in the text. They were able to use their voice. They understood who they are. They understood that they were part of the community and that what they learned could be used within the community. So they understood their importance. So my students need to know where they came from. They need to know the reality. The history can't be that of what white America wants them to know. I feel like the Amistad curriculum really gave me a hand in helping them to understand why we are so hard and why they should not give up in school or with even things in life. Just letting them know what happened in the past. I think that the curriculum has definitely enhanced their Black female students' experiences, and I think this happened because it gave them a sense of self, gave them a sense of who they are. They got to learn about women and women's roles in different cultures. So I can talk about this. Thank you. Thank you. So we wanted to bring up this quote from Jose Rizal, who's really famous in the Philippines and for his artistic work as well. And something that resonated with us 4 years ago now is no history, no self, no history, no self. And so with that, we hope that our teachers continue to build their self so that they build our students' sense of self.
And certainly open it up for any questions. Before we just ask, I just also, Mr. Lopes is here, and I just want everybody to know, Mr. Lopes is the principal at Chancellor, and honestly, my whole office abandons us every day to go to his school. So I'm not sure what Mr. Lopes is doing at the school that has enormous attraction, though, from the ELA office, especially to his school. But I just wanted to acknowledge him because he's like, it's the principals. We help to make curriculum. We help to build curriculum with teachers, with principals, and so on. But it's the work in the school that brings it to life. And I think that hopefully you can, in this bit of time, get a glimpse of the impact on teachers. And when teachers are impacted so that they are doing research, they're not just using, remember what the second slide we began with, where we talked about what were some of the conditions that gave rise to this need. One of them was that there were package programs that actually, I mean, think about, this is like a bit of colonizing, that actually told teachers what to say. Like somebody in another part of the country wrote it. Like that's pretty, I just find that pretty remarkable that you could write something, in Texas, and 4 years later think somebody in Newark is going to be, that would be relevant even. And by the way, the children are always removed from that design. it's like they're not part of it. They're going to be acted upon. Probably the largest shift that this curriculum has the potential for making is that for us to stop thinking about acting upon people and start thinking about making things with people. That shift is the work, and that's why I wanted the principals to be called out, because they're leading it.
No,
I think you have to. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think.
Just step forward.
Step forward?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I'm on camera.
You are.
Oh no, I'm. Now you went from K to 5, and my understanding of the district is that, you know, the social studies people were actually doing homicide. So I was wondering, and they don't start that till like 7th grade, I guess? 6th grade. So the connection from what you just said to those higher grades, homicide, how does that play out? And secondly, I guess, yeah, how does that play out?
That's a great
And
question.
How can you get the professional development?
Mhm.
How does that? I mean, because I'm hearing that teachers, it's in the summer and they don't want to, you know, they don't want to deal with that. So the attendance, with the availability of professional development, you know.
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. So professional so let me first answer the first part of the question, and then talk about sort of the second pieces. And if I forget something, you'll all remind me. And if you have something to say you want to add to it, by all means do. So just at a curricular level, we have a director of social studies who reviewed our K-5 curriculum. She reviewed it because it's a position I kept vacant until I found her. She is Corinne Conover. She is a historian, and we waited a long time for someone of her caliber to come. So Corinne is the person who is the cohesion across grades. So the K-5 is an integrated ELA and social studies curriculum. Corinne is currently working on 4th and 5th grade as standalone social studies. We're not getting rid of our Amistad units, but students will also then have a far more intensive look at geography, which Corinne has indicated is, you know, a missing piece. We do have geography-based full units, but we don't do a year study. And Corinne's doctoral work is in human geography, and she's bringing all of that to bear. Her work is stunning. I don't know how else to characterize it. The African American history class course that she has just built, the work she does with, I want to talk about the professional development with teachers and, in this case, high school DCs, is a model. She works with them to build conceptual-based social studies. So it's not like a bungee jump into 6th grade. There's cohesion across. In terms of professional development isn't something that we have some days in the school year, but it's a flawed model to think of professional development as something you go to. I mean, I think we've all gone to things. It doesn't necessarily result in the work. In many ways, the work that Dr. Wicks did is the highest level of professional learning because she's engaging with teachers and helping them to think about their practice and reflection. We also have mostly job-embedded professional learning, so that there are PLCs and so on. Okay, so I'm going to stop, because you know what? We just left the central office, and we're moving into the schools, so let me let the experts in the schools. We'll start with Kashawn.
Anyone that likes to speak, you wouldn't mind standing in front of the camera?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, still morning. Kashawn Lopes, principal at Chancellor Avenue School. I just want to commend Dr. Riley and her team. Not only are they hiring teachers to write curricula, they're reviewing it she has the entire central office team going out into schools and supporting teachers with that work as well. Teachers are learning it over the summer. They're implementing it. The teams are partnering with the schools. It's one thing to write it, but we need teachers to then embrace it, to unpack it. And we do that through PLC meetings, through our coaches meetings. So at every level of the organization, from administration down to teachers, there's professional development provided throughout the year through weekly PLC meetings so that our students and our teachers are prepared. And they did a phenomenal job. They all want to come to Chancellor because I open the doors, I welcome the team, I partner with the work. My team sits in on those meetings and co-plans with the Office of Teaching and Learning. So at all levels, we're making sure that we're partnering to ensure that teachers and students are successful. So thank you.
Yay. Thank you. So I second Mr. Lopes. So as a principal myself, professional learning communities, remember, it's like they have to do the work to be able to understand. And so not only are they unpacking the units, but we have something called learning sprints. And so we go through a PLC inquiry cycle where they're not only looking at instructional strategies that they may have an instructional problem with, they also look at the concepts that they don't understand. And so they go through a cycle, maybe 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks cycle to really understand the concepts and the strategies. We never blame the kids. We're changing mindset. It's not a kid problem. It's a teacher problem of practice. And therefore, that's how we're doing our professional development. Okay, next question. We have another question. Oh, you have a question?
Oh, yeah. Everybody has to stand in front of the camera. I have to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
So my name is Miriam Bay, and I am the parent, one of the parents in the 80s and 90s here in the city of Newark who fought for this law because our children were not taught Black history. Okay. And I'm also the former school board member and president of the Newark Public Schools. So here's my concern that I have about this. I commend you for what you're doing, but I'm listening. Okay, and what I'm hearing is not what I thought it was going to be. And so what I'm concerned was like, when the young children come into the classrooms, what does the classrooms look like? Okay, are they seeing themselves? Are they seeing their Black selves up there? Okay, because they have to see the greatness that they have of their ancestors and what their ancestors did for them. So, and for the folks who are doing the curriculum, are they taught about our great historians like John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, who talked about our Black history and the slave trade and how all that affected us? Because when we're talking, in my opinion, what I wanted my children to learn, because now all of my children were grown, got grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so they all grown, and we still have this fight. So I want them to feel when they go into the classroom, before any of the discussions begin, they walk in, they say, oh, my mother or my father was a Black mathematician, or they were a Black business person. So are we teaching the real history about what happened to us when we came here, and then how we evolved, and what's going on today?
I'll start, and then Dr. Riley, if you want to.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we had a concern with was this. You can have personal development, which is really good, but sorry. Okay. I thought I was gonna get off of that.
You don't want to miss your thoughts.
Okay.
We're changing the course of history and education.
Okay.
Important to archive this.
Okay, so you can have personal development and everything, but since all of this is so new, okay, and we have this whole critical theory thing going on now, right? So since all of this is so new, for me, the person who is standing before the students in the classroom, they have to love those children, okay? And so we already know that ain't happening, okay? So my concern is who's standing before our children? Because in a lot of cases, it's not like the teachers didn't know, because when my children were going to school, we had an issue on a regular basis with teachers who did not want to teach our history. So now that we have this, and thanks, to Bill Payne and Mr. Craig and everything for making this happen, okay? So now that we have it, it's all good. We know that it's a law that has not been implemented in the state of New Jersey, okay? Because that's the law, okay? So who are the teachers that's coming before them? Are you going to black universities to get teachers to come and teach our children? Okay, so I'm just interested because now like I said, this is my first time hearing how it's going to be implemented. And though I applaud you, I'm not that impressed. You know what I mean? Because of everything that we did to fight to get this. Thank you.
Thank you. So, first I want to say that we live what we preach. So if you come to Sir Isaac Newton, if you go to Chancellor, if you go to any school in Newark, you're going to see this practice because, yes, please come to Sir Isaac Newton, open door policy. I also didn't mention that I'm a mother of 5 children. My husband's sitting right here. All of my children attend Newark Public Schools. I have 4 of them that have gone through the Amistad units. 2 of them are going through it right now. And I ask them every day what you learned today. And they can proudly stand and say that I learned this today. I have one son, and he's now in the 7th grade. They were learning about Emmett Till. They were learning about different things in the middle school. And he saw that a lot of his classmates weren't reacting. And he put on his hoodie. And my son has locks in his hair, and he's darker skinned. And he said, I could have been Emmett Till, and I could be Trayvon Martin. And that's what our curriculum did for our students. And it's not because I'm his mother. It's because not only am I talking to him as a parent, but he's going into school and learning this. When it comes to the teachers at Sir Isaac Newton, our faculty meeting, we talked about staff meetings this morning. Our faculty meetings are not an agenda. We work on culturally relevant pedagogy. My teachers have watched the video of the race. If you don't know what the race is, it's the video where you stand and you understand who your students are. You understand who each other is in the classroom. And I tell them every day that so if there's a discipline problem, I say to the teacher, well, who is that student? What can you do differently? Why are they acting that way? What are you not doing? And so all of my students see themselves in most of my teachers. And so I can say that is the shift happening in our district as well. Those who do not want to teach are leaving. And that's okay, because that's what I tell teachers. It's okay if you're not able to move your biases. It's a free country. However, it cannot happen here. And so I don't know if I'm answering your questions, but this is what I feel that we're doing in the district. Okay. I don't know, Mr. Lopes, if you want to add on. As principal.
I want to say the Newark of yesterday is not the Newark of today. The superintendent and his cabinet are very intentional about the leaders as well, because it trickles down. So I'm a black male, young black male. I represent the community. I represent the West Ward of Newark. Grew up in Irvington, but the West Ward. So when I go to hire, I, of course, interview the best candidates, but I also need individuals that look like and resemble my students, that know what it means to go to the bodega or go to the corner store as well, that aren't afraid to go knock on doors and meet our students and our families what they need. You're not coming into our school district, and you're not coming here and just leaving to get a check. You're going to empower and ensure that our children have what they need to be successful. And that, in whatever way that may be, what does success look like is self-defined. But you're going to come in, you're going to educate our children, and you're going to give them what they need. And you're going to learn from them as well, because they're going to teach you. So that's what Newark Public School stands for. And it starts with the work of the leadership, as well as the teachers and the community. And we just ask that you come in and you partner with us. If there's an issue, you come with some solutions. How can we figure this out together? Because we're all here to educate children and ensure that they're successful so that they can continue to build Newark up. They're not leaving our district and going other places. They're not leaving our city. You need to invest in our school system. You need to invest in our city, and you need to bring back and continue to uplift it. So that's what Newark Public School stands for.
Okay, and so I just want to add on to what you're saying because
You gotta come back up.
Come on. Well, join me.
okay, I just want to just add on what you just said, that the Newark's public schools today is not the school of yesterday. Okay, so here's the thing.
You mentioned when your children were growing up.
That's right. So
So-
here's the thing.
You know, this is
You are
actually
doing
similar.
this. You are doing this because of those of yesterday. Okay, and so therefore that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. Okay, it's good. You're a young black brother. I appreciate that and everything. But just because this is who you are, my concern is how is it being taught? How is it being taught to our children? Not just because you're standing in front of them because you're black, because that's not enough. Okay, I remember when because I graduated from St. Peter's University. Okay, and I remember my favorite subject was history because the white professor made it for us as though he was there when it happened. Nothing was degraded or anything. Okay, everything was uplifted during that. So I loved history because of that. So you don't have to be able to teach black history just and be black. A white person can teach black history. Okay, that's why I said earlier why it's important who is standing in front of those children when they're teaching this. So we all, old and young, came together, okay, to get this Amistad law because of what was happening. So don't remove us because you have a new administration who's different. If it wasn't for the leadership that we had at that time, mainly the parents, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. Because remember, this law just really is now being enacted because, and it's been over 20 years, okay? So that shows how the leaders have been thinking about our black children. And that's why I said, when the children walk in the door, do they see their greatness? That's what I want to know.
So why don't I answer?
Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much. And Ms. Bay, before you leave, I'm not going to ask you to come back up and talk about, but before you leave, I'd like to get contact info. Because one of the things we began with is that what helped to inform this work. Tiffany and I would be up till and I'm not exaggerating, it'd be 11:45 at night, and I'd say to her, because this was during the pandemic, we each were home, and I'd say, at midnight, we have to be done. We can't keep doing this. And we thought we had knocked it out of the park. We thought we did the most amazing curriculum. And then we invited other people into the curriculum process. And we learned that our amazing curriculum was a bit tarnished. Our amazing curriculum had holes in it. Our amazing curriculum was not informed by a local history of activists. And so Dr. Payne said to me, you need to invite people to the table. And so we did. And I mentioned it before, but I probably, didn't mention it with enough detail. Our work, I stayed in contact with the group across 2 years. Giving them updates because we knew we shifted immediately to the local historian to help us do this work better. It helped us to do things like in the 4th grade curriculum, there are, I don't know if there's 3 units now, 2 or 3 units that focus on ancient Africa. So that when I was sitting here listening to you, I was thinking, I would love for you to see it. Because, and not to see it, and here's what the community activists have absolutely helped me not to think about anymore, is not to agree with us. Because there's lots of people who agree. But to be critical, because absolutely what that will do is it will make it better for our kids. And that's the only goal that we have, is how do we ensure that our children are achieving highly, because we know that what has happened has never been about children's capacities. It would be illogical for that to have ever been the issue. And so we know that the issue is about relevance. We also know the issue is about how prepared are the folks who are teaching? How supported are they? Do we give them, and this is a central office problem, do we give them longer than a year to learn something? The curricular changes in Newark Public Schools in every single discipline it moved from procedural knowledge only to conceptual and procedural knowledge. That meant that teachers had to not just know how to do things, they had to deeply understand the work themselves. And I'd like to say that that's, like an easy thing to do, but it is not. It's not easy. And so this is work that is obviously well underway. I didn't even realize till you said it was 4 years, that it's 4 years underway. And I will tell you, I don't know many things. The only thing I actually do know is about how achievement gets raised. And I have no doubt in the city of Newark that achievement will continue to raise, but really raise, not like, 30% of the kids are doing well. That's not good. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. When we begin with 70%, as we're seeing today in Tiffany School, that's a solid place to begin at the beginning of the school year. When it's 80%, it's even better, because then there's a real opportunity to ensure all students can learn. We'll exchange some information so that I get some contact. I've actually, your name was referenced to me by a former principal in the district as well. All right, so one more question. Okay.
I'm also the note taker, and so we have till 12:15. So I just wanted to do a time check as well. And I don't need to stand up. I'm good.
You're fine.
Okay.
As long as you take the microphone, you're perfect.
My name is Deborah Smith Gregory, and I serve as the president of NAACP Newark. And I attend the majority of the board meetings. And one of the requests that I had, and so I'm going to frame it into a question, with the 4 years that this particular curriculum has been going on for K through 5, is there a way? No. Is the Board of Education working to use the curriculum of the 1619 project, because it does have lesson plans with it, if at all, so that the work that is being done from K through 4, there is references that can be used in the high school curriculum while that curriculum is being made, because the New York Times actually provides lesson plans for the 1619 project. And when I brought it up at the board meeting, I was told, well, we're doing the Amistad curriculum, period. I mean, I'm just telling you what I was told. So I have this opportunity to find out if there is a way to integrate the curriculum and the lesson plans from the 1619 project while curriculum is being crafted for the high schools.
So the high school curriculum is crafted. So it's not as if it's not crafted at this point. It is completed. It is based on the national social studies standards. And so what does that actually mean in practice? It is an inquiry-based curriculum. It is a curriculum that begins with questions and is developed, and students are using these questions, but they're also developing the capacity to, more importantly, pose questions. The curriculum is aligned to the 2020 standards. In New Jersey, social studies standards were revised in 2020. And our curriculum, including the K-5 work, is aligned to the standards. In terms of the 1619 project, the main author of that text, as you know, was here in Newark. I had contacted her when I had just arrived here, and get the Sunday Times and read the August edition and thought, who is this? And how do we have her come? So her work, the 16, not the, so there's two, when we talk about 1619, we're talking about two different kinds of publications, or three now. So the work that she did at WICWAC, and the former principal is here as well, Mr. Hollis, that work was based completely, the work that we did with students during that first fall of 2019, that was based purely on the single publication at that time, which was the New York Times Magazine. And Nicole Hannah-Jones came, and she actually did work with us ahead of time, and then she did work during the time. Ms. Conover joined us at the end of that year, and I wish this wasn't on tape, but well, you know what? We're all going to be truthful here. So there wasn't curriculum in history that I could find. I found bits and pieces of it. So we knew we had to absolutely rebuild everything. And Ms. Conover's understanding is that she is building with teachers and with school administrators a curriculum that embraces the spirit and intention of the 1619 project, but also meets 6 other mandates by law that we have in New Jersey around disabilities, LGBTQ, and other areas of requirements that, frankly, that we have, in addition to the Amistad work. So I can tell you that the 1619 project helps to inform that work, but it is not the only scholarship of the work. The main scholarship of the work comes out of Professor Higglebottom, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. She is a professor at Harvard. Did I say that correctly? Yeah, thank you. Okay. She'll actually be coming in December to do a lecture series with us and the community as well. So Ms. Conover certainly has great respect for Nicole Hannah-Jones, but her teacher was this teacher. And so her scholarship is based on the scholarship. The book that our students are using in the text comes from this professor, and that is, again, one slim portion of the curriculum. It is 6th grade through 12th grade. The work has all been redone, and some of, like, the 1619 book itself, there are sections of that we'll be pulling into ELA because they're essay. They make amazing essay. And then last, I'm actually now working on a project for the superintendent for 13 weeks of junior year students, and it is to help them do better on this state assessment. I'll be pulling from 1619 project as well because of the quality of essay in the text. But cohesively, I invite you to look at, by all means, come look at what Ms. Conover has done. I oversee all curriculum. There isn't a curriculum product that's better that I've ever seen in my life than what Corinne has done. It is. We just had a board meeting, right? Right. So the last part of it was just done. We can't put anything up until the board, because we're not a state-operated district anymore. So we actually have to have laws, right? Right. No, I mean, right, but it has, yeah, and that happened on Thursday, right? Okay. Yes, you have. You know, you have to stand up if you want to ask a question. You've got to stand up.
I wanted to just give a shout out to Bill Payne.
Yes, absolutely.
Stephanie, what's her last name? Stephanie. That was the.
I don't know, but
Yeah, Stephanie from the Amistad Commission.
Right.
James Harris, and Tom Perrier. These people have been banging at this for the last 20 years. I got a lot of respect for that. And the connection between what you guys are doing and CRT, because a lot of times the Amistad gets attacked. We're not doing that. That's CRT. So what is the connection?
Sure. So I can admit, having presented at the National CRT, I can admit that here. I don't know if there are places, not sure I can admit that anymore. So culturally responsive teaching, critical pedagogies, without exception, we proudly include inside our curriculum documents, not only in the K-5 work, not only in the high school work, but across our curriculum documents, because it requires students to be thoughtful and to be thinkers. As far as I know, I mean, I'm right now defending a book that there are people who challenge us a lot, and that's part and parcel. I proudly defend books because our republic requires it. We should be doing that. So I don't think we have like a separate understanding of a critical race theory. I mean, and this isn't from New York Public Schools, this is just Marion Riley now. I would say if all of our students in America could understand critical race theory, we would be at the top of the PISA charts when we do international testing. Critical race theory is complicated. I can tell you one of the units that the board just approved has the word intersectionality in it. Because we understand that it is more complicated than how race has been depicted in the past, and some of the ways that some of the people here have been talking about. So the whole idea of intersectionality absolutely shows up in our curriculum. And again, that's one aspect of critical race theory. It's not the only aspect, but it's an important one. And it's probably a very viable one for the work that we do. It's present in the work that Ms. Wicks did, or Dr. Wicks did with her research, and how does gender, in this case gender and race, how is that influential? So, I mean, I can speak to it probably just for that, to that little bit of a limit. I don't know if I answered your question or not, though. Okay.
Just in terms of the 1619 project, and you said it's inquiry-based,
Right.
the curriculum, and you're pulling from the essays.
I am, right.
Okay, so I guess my question is, does the curriculum allow for other genres of writing other than essays?
Yeah, so does the history curriculum or does any curriculum?
Does this curriculum that has just been
Mhm.
crafted,
Yeah.
is it drawing specifically and completely on essays? Because that book is arranged as it does have essays.
And
it also
poems.
has short stories,
Right.
it has
Mhm.
poetry.
Right.
And all of
Song.
those ways are ways that children, young people learn. So
Right.
my question is the inquiry-based curriculum focused on factual, nonfiction writing, or is it inclusive of other genres of writing?
Sure. So the
The high school students.
right. So so when high school for us is 6 through 12. That's the curriculum base. Has multitude of different text types. And absolutely, inside the 1619 project, the Blue Book, it has song, it has spirituals, it has, a range of texts. In our organization of texts, what we talk about are primary source documents. And so a spiritual is a primary source document. Laws are primary source documents. Literature are not necessarily primary source documents, but they can be used to inform and are used to inform. The high school, we try not to think of any grade, but especially now high school where it is so departmentalized. We look at, in the humanities, how do we cross from English to social studies. So a unit of study that the board will be getting for November is a unit on visibility and invisibility. And that marries together essay, short story, poetry, and then it finishes with something called Photo Voice. Photo Voice is Carolyn Wang's research method where ordinary people are given cameras to document. And our ninth grade students will be documenting the presence and absence, visibility and invisibility as they define it. I'm looking forward to seeing what that will be. So just to be brief, because I wasn't, the answer is yes. There's a multitude of discourse and genres. They're arranged in history primarily, though, through primary source documents. There's very few secondary source documents. They're mostly primary source documents. Yes. Can you turn it or? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Wicks and Riley. Sound like a law firm. My understanding of the Amistad Act was that it was to apply across the curriculum. So my first question, I think, was answered because you said there are units relating to ancient Africa. So my other question is, are there, besides social studies and language arts, I heard a lot about that, are there units specifically for the math and sciences? And how difficult or easy is that translation?
So, and it goes back to your question. So the Amistad Bill talks about not only talking about enslavement, but in contributions and the impact of African and African Americans. And so you'll see that in K to 2, it's really like giving them the basis of everything, because it might be a little too in depth. But once they get into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they go through a timeline of history. So they start with the African civilizations, the indigenous culture civilizations. They move then into the enslavement. Then they move into the resistance. Then they move into today. So there's a timeline. So they're not only learning about enslavement because that's what everybody was talking about, in the narrative. But it's a timeline of American history that adds in Black history, Latinx history, and the indigenous, the native cultures. And then science.
Sure. So I'm going to actually talk about math. So I just hired, or the district just hired, Diana Sapala. She is the former president of the AMTNJ. That's the Association for Teachers of Mathematics in New Jersey. And she's a current board member on NCTM, the National Council of Teachers of Math. And she's also a doctoral candidate finishing her work on culturally responsive mathematics. There is a textbook, and I'm too old to remember all these titles in my head these days. I'm just being honest. But there is a text. I had sat in last year on a culturally relevant and responsive mathematics session. And I didn't know if it was, sometimes you hear those titles and you're disappointed when you get to it. It becomes hokey, or it's just not, it's like, this is one mathematician. I wasn't sure what I'd find. What I found was this amazing dynamic duo of math professors and teachers who work together to craft a book on the topic as a professional text. Diana, she just started on Tuesday. People have to be released from their districts. And we were in the former director's office where copies of this book is. And she said, oh my goodness, she said, she knows these people, she works with them. And I'm thinking, this is why you've been hired for us. I would love to be able to say to you that we have tackled that. And because I don't want to just have it done where, it's like a month thing or something that's insulting. And it doesn't help us. How do we begin to look at, and this is probably a lot of pedagogical practices that are going to help our students in mathematics achieve? Because right now we're not getting that done. And just as we understood and knew unequivocally that the shift in the humanities would result, as we are already seeing in Tiffany's school, with improvement, that we're seeing at Chancellor, improvement for students. I don't doubt that it's not just, I mean, we heard that this morning, it's not just about the math instruction. It's also about the pedagogy of how that content is being taught. And so Ms. Sopala is here in part to help us learn that, so that we can begin to, like, our physical curriculum is good in mathematics. It's good. It's now the methodologies of teaching mathematics that we need to struggle with. I would love to tell you we were further ahead, but I wouldn't be truthful. It's nascent. We're beginning it.
Okay, so it's 12:30.
Yes.
Just about. Can we certainly give our workshop leaders a great hand? Difficult topic, a great hand. The notes will be given over to the conference organizers, and lunch is supposed to be until 1:15.
Oh,
Okay?
thank you.